What's good, everybody? Welcome into Inside the Green Room with Danny Green. Harrison Sanford. Danny is chiming in all the way from Indiana as he continues to cover the NBA Finals in the building. I am in New York City, and once again, we will talk to you about what has been a fascinating so far NBA Finals. But there's so much more that is happening in the world of basketball. And so we'll start somewhere else, and then eventually we will get to the NBA Finals. Before we get into all those things, just a quick reminder, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you are using any podcast app, particularly the Audacy app, make sure you leave us a 5-star rating. That is definitely approved. And if you're not using a podcast app or would like to use something other than a podcast app, you can find our content on YouTube as well. Now, let's get into it.
Yeah.
After leading the New York Knicks to its first conference finals appearance in 25 years, after having the highest winning percentage for a head coach in New York Knicks history, the New York Knicks fired Tom Thibodeau after losing to the Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. That series was lost in 6 games. Now, that decision to let go of Tom Thibodeau has been questioned by many. Some of it because of how poorly or how well the Indiana Pacers have played here in these NBA Finals, further validating how good of a team they are because of the success that Tom Thibodeau had as a Knicks coach. And it's been even more ridiculed recently because the New York Knicks have made a number of requests to interview current head coaches. Those include Minnesota Timberwolves head coach Chris Finch. It also includes Rockets Ime Udoka. It includes the Atlanta Hawks Quinn Snyder. It includes the Chicago Bulls Billy Donovan. It includes the Dallas Mavericks Jason Kidd. Not for nothing.
I didn't know Billy Donovan was on that list. That's interesting.
Billy Donovan also on the list as well. Not for nothing. They didn't request to speak to Doc Rivers, but that's neither here nor there. With that being said, Danny, I have my thoughts, but I'll let you go first. How are the Knicks operating in a proper fashion? How would you rate how they've handled everything since the season ended so far?
So since we've been here in Indiana, nonstop media hits and long days, right? So I've talked about everything from every angle, from KD to Knicks. And I feel like at this point, if I continue to talk about the Knicks, it'll be in a negative manner, and I don't want to bash them. So, and I've spoke about it before, but you got to.
Hey, but if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. Go, keep it real.
In the beginning, we both expressed we didn't think that Tibbs should have been fired because we didn't think there were better options out there, and that's not the only reason. But he also
that's not what I said.
I said that. And I also, now it's not the only reason, but I also said because they had a great season. They had a winning season. They did something they hadn't done in 25 years. So I didn't think Tibbs deserved to be fired, unless there was something like, we have a coach here that's available that is better than Tibbs. So it made sense to let him go. But he'd done a great job since he's been there. He had a great year. They had a great year. I'm gonna say they overachieved, but they got to the Eastern Conference Finals, which most people didn't expect them to do. So, with that being said, the beginning part of the operation, I wouldn't grade it as an F or failure. I would think, okay, it's a move. I didn't think it was a great move. It would have been a great move if they had a great backup plan. If your backup plan is to just swing for the fences and try to steal a coach from another organization, I would rate that plan pretty low. It's not a great plan to me. But all in all, to have fallback as a Mike Malone is not a bad scenario either. Mike Malone is a good coach, but to me, I think it's a similar move. It's a lateral move with Tibbs. It's kind of same style. I wouldn't say same style of coaching, but the same type of coach. They're both very good coaches, but I don't think it's like, because if he was a great coach, I think Denver would have kept him. Like if he was put over the edge type of coach, I think he's a really good coach. I think he's a great coach, but I don't know if he's people now can still considering him top tier, especially in the Denver front offices. But he's from the area. I think he's a good fit. But the way they're going about it right now, it just it seems kind of crazy. It seems a little desperate. But hey, at this point, you might as well swing for the fences. You might as well try to get Spo. You might as well try to get Steve Kerr. You might as well try to get I don't know who else is the the better coaches out there that are available. Rick Carlisle, So it just seems when you make a move like this and you don't have a plan, it seems very unorganized. And I said, but to have a fallback with Mike Malone, I think is a good safe plan, or like a safety net. But as they're operating right now, it just seems kind of irresponsible.
All right. So, Danny, you played with LeBron James, and you remember I'm sure you remember vividly anything that happened with LeBron James became a headline. Anything that took place, whether it was something good or something bad. Well, let's put it like this. With LeBron James, he is so popular that anything he does, even if it's the right thing, will have a negative spin. He could build a foundation in Akron, Ohio, and somebody's going to say, this is just all of it. Somebody's going to twist and say it's about him. He's always trying to seem like he's holier than thou. He could start a production studio and talk about the X's and O's of basketball. And he could say, this is LeBron. This is why he went to LA, because he's focused on a media business as opposed to winning championships. Anything LeBron James does that's a good thing is still a bad thing in someone's eyes. And whether they actually believe that or not, or if they're just doing it because he's LeBron James, it's going to get done.
Somebody's going to have something to say.
Somebody's going to have something to say. We are now, because the Knicks are a good team, we are in the Knicks for clicks era. Anything the Knicks do is going to have negative spin. Allow me to give some positive spin. If you go back to when Leon Rose first did the head coaching search, when he first became the president of the New York Knicks, 2020, it took him 2 months to find a head coach, and he interviewed a wealth of head coaches. If you look at the NBA right now, there is not a single head coaching vacancy outside of the New York Knicks. There's no other team that's looking for a head coach other than the New York Knicks. So when they let go of Tom Thibodeau, well, they don't have any competition. They don't have to worry about any other coaching vacancies being filled. If there's one thing the New York Knicks are not in, is a rush. On top of the president that was already set from Leon Rose, where he took 2 months to fill the head coaching position back in 2020. He comes back to the head coach and free agency market again, and he's the only person looking for a head coach. He's going to take his time. And because he has the ability to spend more time than usual because he's not competing with anybody else, why not swing for the fences? Yeah. If you walk into the club, you might as well holler at all the joints. Yeah. Holler at the 10s first. Yeah, you might leave with an 8.
You know the eights ain't going nowhere. Nobody's talking to them.
Exactly.
If nobody they came in with nobody and all the 10s have taken up, it's like, all right, let me see what the 10s got. If you're outnumbered, there's more women than men in there. You have a really good shot of going home with somebody nice, regardless.
Exactly. So while I'm in the club, I'ma holler at this baddie. Yeah, she looks great. She's probably got a man, but you know what? I'ma shoot my shot anyway. Oh, there's a baddie over there. You know what? I'ma holler at her too. She probably got the way she walking, the way she looking. She's probably wifed up. But you know what? Let me holler and see what's good. I might get played. It's all good because when I leave the club, I'm leaving with something. Yeah. I'm guaranteed it's still gonna be nice. And it's still gonna be nice.
I'm leaving here with something. You know what I'm saying? But hey, I love the positives.
It's due diligence, Danny. It's just due diligence. You holler, you talk to everybody, even the ones that you want.
Yeah.
And if you don't get him, it didn't hurt the Knicks to try and get Jason Kidd because they weren't gonna, if they don't get him, they wasn't gonna get him anyway. And what happens if they say yes? Oh, that's even better. So for me, this is just due diligence. Now, I know I have a certain Knicks bias. I know there's a certain inherent bias that I have that I can't run away from. I understand that. I understand. With that being said, though, here's what I will admit. It is bad PR. It's not the best PR because it allows for the Knicks for Clicks era, the Knicks for Clicks people to bash on the Knicks because it doesn't. It's not. You can look at it and say this doesn't seem organized, and so the way things have gone about with Tom, letting go of Tom Thibodeau and now having this search that seems unorganized, quote unquote, to me, it's just. This is business. This is just due diligence. This is. If I was running the Knicks, this is what I would do too. Because I already told you I would be, as much as I respect Tom Thibodeau, I thought he did a great job. I do think there was a cap on how great he could lead, the level of greatness he could bring to this team because of his offensive system.
There's a cap.
Stubbornness with his stubbornness and playing, going into the bench. I thought there was definitely a cap. So for me, I thought they wouldn't have to let him go anyway. So now that I'm free of burdens I'm free of having a head coach. And again, I think this is super important. There's no other head coaching vacancy in the NBA right now. They're not there's not 5 other jobs out there that head coaches are running to. It's a free marketplace for them.
Yeah.
So go ahead and do what you got to do. Do your due diligence, holler at everything that you want, maybe even take a long shot. It is what it is. You're going to leave the club with something.
Yeah. Well,
that's Phoenix, why it's just the Knicks for Clicks era, Danny. That's it, and that's why it's become such a story that it has become.
Maybe so. It's always been a Knicks for Clicks. It's always a Los Angeles Lakers. It's always a Cowboys. When you're a big organization or when you're a team that's considered America's team or one of the top teams in the leagues or one of the leagues that you play in, they're always going to talk about you. They're going to find a way to criticize you. But I will say when they do make good moves, they do get a lot of positive clicks. Even when they got Mikal Bridges, when they got Karl-Anthony Towns, everybody say, of course, Knicks fans want everything. We want KD, we want Giannis, we get it. But y'all made great moves in the offseason. Everybody was raving about the group that you had. So I don't think it's always negative. But when you're looking at it in that light, I was originally thinking you guys are like it's a missed opportunity, like OKC dropping game 1 or even, game 3 where they just too many turnovers. I'm like, and Perk is like, look at the positive. They can learn from this. It's like, you can't drop this many games in the finals. You don't have the luxury to just, all right, we lost 2 games. We learned. Like, yeah, luckily it's still only 2-1. So it's 1-4. You can get back into it, but that could cost you a series. This can cost you a really good season if you don't get the coach you want. Now, eventually you have to hire another coach, maybe fire another coach. I don't know if they're going to do a first-time coach, Adrian Griffin type of thing. But if you don't get the coach that you want, it's always tied up. You're going to end up a coach that you just like okay with in place for, it could backfire. You're in line for just a coach that's okay. That's very temporary. And you're probably going to have to pay that coach pretty handsomely because the coaches that are, well, not all of them, but Mike Malone is a coach. He's going to demand some pay and probably a couple years. So you're going to be on the books for 2 coaches if you end up with a coach that you don't want, which could be bad. But yes, when you put it in that light, I do think they take your time. They have a lot of time right now with the hiring of the Phoenix coach. I don't know what the hell they're doing over there, but it looks like they're rebuilding. Now you're the only team that's out there that's looking for a head coach that's in the market. So yes, you might as well swing for the fence. You might as well take your time. And you probably have more options than it looks than you think, because it might be a no now, but when trades happen, when draft happens, this summer happens, those no's might turn into yeses, where some coaches are like, okay, or some organizations like, you know what, we'll let you interview Quinn Snyder. We'll let you interview Billy Donovan. We have a great group here, and Billy's expressed that, he might want to, explore options. So they have time. That's the best thing that's on their side, but this could turn into a backfire situation. But if this ends up, I don't think everything's going to be negative. If they end up getting a good coach, I think this will be like, oh, Leon Rose is a genius, or Dolan is a genius. So there are some things that happen that they still get praised for. And then The Lakers get the same thing. Bron does too, but said there's always some people. That's just the negative. That's just the bots in today's world. There's always going to be some negatives said. Oh, he's not even showing up to the school. He's not running the school. He's just being the face of the school. There's always some BS. But for the most part, you will get positive clicks if you do the positive or the right thing or a thing that is a good move. And as of right now, the way that they're moving, it just seems just a little out of sorts.
Yeah, the optics aren't great. I'll admit that. But again, I think they're just doing their due diligence. And I think you make a great point. Who's to say that maybe by the NBA draft, when teams think a little bit differently about how things are kind of set up because of maybe moves that they make, they might be more willing to let the Knicks interview their head coach. And worst comes to worst, quote unquote, worst comes to worst. If they don't get a coach that's already coaching somewhere else, well, there's Taylor Jenkins. There's Michael Malone, as you mentioned. There is Mike Budenholzer. There is Frank Vogel. There is Mike Brown. And there's also, who I think they probably like, and I don't have any inside information, but Johnny Bryant, who worked under Tom Thibodeau for a multitude of years with the New York Knicks and then became the lead assistant for Kenny Atkinson in Cleveland this past year. And I think just because of what the Knicks want to become, Johnny Bryant should be somebody that they should really look at, because Johnny Bryant helped evolve the Cleveland Cavaliers from what they were but under JB Bickerstaff to what they became under Kenny Atkinson in terms of how they performed in the regular season. There's a lot more ball movement. Donovan Mitchell was more happy to give the ball off. They just played a better brand of basketball, moving from JB Bickerstaff to Kenny Atkinson, with his main assistant becoming Johnny Bryant. Johnny Bryant having left Tom Thibodeau to join that staff. I think if the Knicks were like, you know what, we're fine, we're happy with Johnny Bryant, but before we hire him, let's see if we can get somebody who we think is just better because they have more experience head coaching for the Dallas Mavericks or for the Chicago Bulls or for the Houston Rockets, whatever it might be. All right. Again, I don't see anything wrong with it, but Knicks.
Yeah, I'm with you. And there are some options out there as assistants that could be good head coaches that gives a try. And that were head coaches. Remember, at one point, they had Fizdale, right? I think Fizdale was a good, solid coach, but they could find somebody like that. Not saying they go back to Fizz, but they could have somebody like that that's an assistant somewhere that can be like, all right, we'll give an opportunity again. So, but that's a tough job. You're not going to – Meta World Peace is – I love him to death, but I don't know if you can sign just a random ex-NBA, like New York Knicks guy and be like,
they said Rajon Rondo. Some people try to throw the name Rajon Rondo out there, I guess because he spent time recently with Doc.
Jared Dudley, you know what I'm saying? Like this, there's some guys, there's some guys that are ex-players out there and some that are ex-Knicks, but you better find the right guy or New York is not going to be happy. So
for sure. It's, it is what it is. Since Leon Rose has become the president of the New York Knicks, I don't think there has been one. Every move in every season has been better than the next.
So you have a lot of faith in him.
He hasn't. The worst thing he did was trade for Mikal Bridges, and in a vacuum, it's really not that bad of a move. Obviously, Mikal Bridges is not an all-star, so giving up 5 first-round draft picks for him, it seems like a lot. But let's remember, if you don't get Mikal Bridges, who's to say Jalen Brunson doesn't wait an extra year and then take the supermax and doesn't take that huge haircut if you don't get his former college teammate on that roster? So while people bash Leon, people usually say if the one thing they bash him for is the amount of collateral they gave up to get Mikal Bridges, I say, well, if you don't get Mikal Bridges under those pretenses, then you don't get Jalen Brunson to sign to a condensed contract that put the Knicks in position to have players like OG Anunoby,
unless you kept DiVincenzo. If you kept one of the homies, he might have. But they said you keep enough of the Villanova homies, he would sign it. But yes, Mikal Bridges definitely pushes that narrative for him. So
yeah. I'm trusting the process. I know I have bias, but I know there's some people out there, even the biggest Knicks haters, understand that a lot of this head coaching noise is just noise. That is for sure. All right, let's move on over to the number 2 pick in the draft as we get closer to the NBA draft. There are rumors now, Danny, that the San Antonio Spurs are listening or willing to listen to offers for the number 2 pick. Dylan Harper has long been rumored to be the selection for the number 2 pick, coming obviously after the number 1 pick in Cooper Flagg. I do have a hot take about Cooper Flagg that I think I'm going to save for the end of the show or end of this segment. But with that being said, the number 2 pick might be in play. A team maybe the Philadelphia 76ers want to move up from 3 to 2 for whatever reasons. There are a lot of different things that are out there. Maybe the San Antonio Spurs, maybe the Spurs will be willing to give up the number 2 pick if they can get Giannis. If they have to put in a package for Giannis, I just think. But at the end of the day, Danny, and this is, we can't necessarily predict what's going to happen. Here's what I will say: I do not think at the end of the day it makes sense for the Spurs to hold on to that number 2 pick, because at the end of the day, Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, and De'Aaron Fox is not going to work. And you're only going to cap their potential if you put those 3 players on a roster. I don't think it makes sense to trade De'Aaron Fox now at this point. And obviously, Stephon Castle, it's hard for me to trade away a guy who's the rookie of the year, who has ridiculous athleticism, shows a compete level that you have to value. And Dylan Harper's compete level is going to be questioned after there's such a bad year at Rutgers. And I've seen Stephon Castle play. If I was the Spurs, even though I could see Dylan Harper's potential greatness, I would just say he can't be great here. And I would be so I'm letting him go, but I'm trying to get the most capital for it. Your thoughts?
I'm letting him go only if I get Giannis. I think it works. Chris Paul is gone now. This is a perfect situation for a young kid like that. He's 6'5", 6'6". Like, they're not small. Stephon Castle might be a little shorter than him. More athletic. Of course, he's explosive. But in today's NBA, you can make anything work. These aren't small guards. I've seen Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey share the floor. I've seen Seth Curry and Tyrese Maxey share the floor. So Dylan Harper learning from a De'Aaron Fox and being a backup point guard, I think is a great situation for him. Even if I'm not saying you play all 3 together, but you play them as a 1-2 punch. You can play Dylan and Stephon Castle if you don't get Giannis. Because for me, KD is a good pickup, but doesn't make much sense if you're trying to have longevity of keeping I have a OKC type of run. If you're trying to keep a young, youthful group and be good year in, year out after that window of Kevin Durant, it's going to be tough when he's done in 2 years or so. So his window is short. If you can get Giannis, cool. Yes, I'm using that number 2 pick. But if not, I think Dylan is a great pickup for any group, and especially the Spurs with losing Chris Paul. You have De'Aaron Fox there. He can learn from him. He can pick up some things, but we don't know how much longer De'Aaron Fox is. I'm saying 5 years. I give a guy, I don't know how old he is right now, but if he gives you a good 5 years.
27, 28.
Yeah, give him 5 years, and then your youth, Dylan Harper's 20, 21, you have him for another 10 years. So you want a good backup. You said you don't know what else is going to come about, what else is going to happen, what trades may come about. But I think this would be a great pickup for a young core, young group to pair with Steph Castle and Wemby and De'Aaron Fox. But have those 3 guys, and you got, I don't know if you keep Vassell or Jeremy Sohan. So, yeah, I think this is a great build for a young group. But, yes, if you have the opportunity to get Giannis, use number 2 pick. But I think this would be I think he's a good pickup. And some people don't say it fits, but I think this is a similar situation to how we didn't think Luka and Bron and AR wouldn't fit. I think it could happen. Even though it's a different makeup, they wouldn't play him 3 at the same time, but he could be their 6-man guy that's really good off the, because they don't have, who's the backup point guard? Trey Jones is gone since Chris Paul is gone. Is it going to be Steph Castle? They're going to split minutes. You got to have some depth, and these 2 teams that are in the finals are showing it. And I think this gives you depth at the wing position, especially at the point guard position with, if something happens to De'Aaron Fox or Steph Castle, you know what I'm saying? Throughout the season, 82 games, there's going to be some things that's going to happen. And I think Dylan Harper would be a great pickup for San Antonio.
27 years old. That is the age of De'Aaron Fox. And yes, I agree with you, Danny. I think it can work. I think, there's definitely a good argument for it. But I am trying to get the max potential out of the number 2 pick. This is not the number 15 pick. This is not the number 18 pick. This is not the 25 pick. I'm using the number 2 pick. I want to more than likely start the number 2 pick in the draft. I want the fact that he would be slotted in as a bench player off rip when I'm intent on making the playoffs doesn't make me feel like I'm maximizing. And it's not as if okay, De'Aaron Fox is 35, so he'll play one more year, then eventually he'll take over the starting point guard position. Danny, imagine you getting drafted as imagine you being a top 5 lottery pick, and you get drafted to a team that just has let's just say here that has a 20. You get drafted, Danny, at age 20. And in front of you is a 27-year-old Kawhi Leonard and a 28-year-old OG Anunoby, and you're 22 years old.
Hey.
You're destined, I'm not saying you're destined to the bench for your career, but you would be saying, "I'm capped." As long as I'm going to be a member of this roster, I could only go so high. And that would be my fear for not just for Dylan Harper, but also for the Spurs. His utility can't be maximized. Am I wrong?
No, I think you are wrong. I think it's crazy to say this. They talked about this draft. There's only one franchise guy, and you have a hot take on that franchise guy. Even that franchise guy being drafted, it's all situational. He is probably going to be a role player for the first couple of years of his life.
Well, that's a unique.
Most of his life,
Mavericks might be a unique circumstance.
Regardless, most people in the draft, you look at the lottery guys as franchise guys, and most of the time they don't turn out. They're going to be role play. They're more than likely going to turn out to be a role player than a franchise guy. It actually helps them early on. It could help them be on a bad team to grow faster, to grow more, but it helps them to not have that much pressure on them, like Cooper Flag, to be in Dallas, who could easily play behind somebody there. It could be a bench guy, but he's probably going to start. But he's in a situation, he's going to be a role player. And some of those guys are older, so his time will come, but he's learning from vets. Same with Dylan Harper. And in today's NBA, when you have Victor Wembanyama, you can play all 3 of those guys at the same time. With a Jeremy Sohan at the 4 or a Vassell even at the 4. You have the biggest guy in the goddamn NBA, the best defensive player. You could play anybody around him. You'll be okay. And you have pieces that can work. Vassell, Kelton Johnson. You have a lot of that, but you can use those pieces to get somebody else if you need to. But you have Victor Wembanyama, it don't matter who you play. Like I said, these guys can still grow. These guys, you ain't capped when you're playing with Victor Wembanyama. And you know that I love De'Aaron Fox, he's great, but there's always some times where he has some type of injury where he has to sit out for a tenure of time. And even if it wasn't De'Aaron Fox, it would have been what? Chris Paul. It would have been anybody. 82 games, there's always a window of opportunity where, even in New York, Jalen Brunson was out for a fourth of the season. He's going to get time to grow and Stephon Castle. You can't play Stephon Castle 48 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's still young. He's only year 2.
For sure.
There's plenty of opportunity for this kid and most people to grow in whatever organization if you use them the right way. Even if they come off the bench their first couple of years, he still has an opportunity to learn and even get into the starting lineup in some years to come after that. Because we don't know if De'Aaron Fox is going to stay there after his contract's up. After year 3 or 4 years, he's a free agent. Are you keeping De'Aaron Fox? Are you going to trade him? You don't know. I just don't see it as early on. Yes, it's going to be like, damn, he's not going to be the main guy, which I don't think he needs to. This draft class is good, but these are a great group of guys that I could see as intricate pieces to playing a great role into some championship teams. I don't see a lot of them being the guy, the Kevin Garnett, the Tim Duncan, the franchise guy. Those are very rare to find. Those are hidden gems. And even Cooper Flag, I'm not saying he's going to be the next. I don't see him being the next Dirk or being the next LeBron James or Luka or, that type of talent like a Zion. And I'm pretty sure your hot take is going to be very similar to that. He's going to be a very good player. To me, he does a little bit of everything. I'm not saying Andre Karolinko, But like he's that style of player. If he develops a great jumper or some moves, maybe, Gordon Hayward. I don't know what else you see him at. Jason Tatum, I guess, is the ceiling. But it's a very slim chance, a risk for him to become that. You know how hard it is to be Jason Tatum? So to me, he's a very good player that does a lot of different things, more of a defensive player, and that can rebound and push and block shots. On the next level, it's going to be very different for him. He's going to have to work on his handle. He's going to have to work on that jump shot. And yes, he can become a really good player, a great player. But the chances of him being a franchise guy are very slim, regardless of pick. We've seen so many number one picks that are just like, what happened to him? Oh, what happened to him? Even Andrew Wiggins, Anthony Bennett. Like, you can go down the line of so many guys that were back-to-back number one picks, and you're like, oh, shit, he was a number one pick. I didn't know that. And even those guys didn't become franchise guys.
I think you've convinced me, Danny. I think the right mode, the right thing to do, you draft Dylan Harper, and if he ends up being a superstar player, if he shows signs like, yo, if you let go of De'Aaron Fox, we could be even better, then you move De'Aaron Fox. But until he shows that, you bring him in.
It could be the next Tyrese Maxey. And even Tyrese took 3-4 years. He had to play behind James Harden. You know what I mean? Like, it took him some time. He just outletted and ran. He could be that. Dylan's very good at finishing. He has to work on his jumper. He has to work on some other things. But he's an athletic 6'5" guard, big body, lefty, can finish around the rim greatly. That is a great, and I feel like most rookies, it's a luxury. It's a great for them to learn from somebody, to come into a situation where it's not like all eyes and be coming to a decent team. I don't want to see Dylan go to DC, you know what I'm saying? Or a Charlotte and be like, all right, you got to be behind LaMelo and they're terrible. And he has to, there's a reason why certain guys aren't getting talked about anymore. What's the kid's name that's in Charlotte now? He's good, but if he was in a better market,
Brandon Miller.
Yeah, would he be better if he actually had to learn behind a Paul George or actually be with a good team? Would he learn some professionalism and actually be more polished at this point? And now you got a PG that's probably leaving. If he ended up in the Clippers, learn from Kawhi, who we don't know how many more years he's playing, and it's like, all right, now it's my turn. This is the best scenario for a rookie, man. I would love that for these young guys to be able to have the opportunity. Cooper Flag, no, but I don't want to see him in the teams that are really bad, Charlotte, DC, like, I don't want to see him there. That's a lot of pressure for Risha Shea, Star, all those guys. The rookies now you don't even hear from anymore. They don't even look at a rookie of the year conversation because it's how bad their team is, even if they had a great year.
So maybe it's this. Maybe a lot of fans fall into this. When we look at the draft, we think about drafting for who they could be 5 years from now. And we want to put them in that slot right away. We want to put it, and that's part of the reason why I don't think it makes sense to put this just for the Spurs to draft Dylan Harper. I'm like, it doesn't, like 5 years from he should be going to a team where he could be his role 5 years from now. And maybe he could still be that with the Spurs. But I understand your point. It's probably best that we don't ask them to be the superstar before we even ask them to be a rotation player. And maybe that's where
so much pressure on these kids, man. And I said, if he was a Zion type talent, like, even though Zion hasn't panned out, but his talent is something we've never seen before. Just his explosiveness is unbelievable.
If he was a Ja Morant, if he was a Kevin Durant,
different.
He had to slot them right away.
We haven't seen that from anybody in this draft, honestly, like where it was like they're just so explosively talented or gifted naturally, where it's like, we need to let this kid's got to fly. Like, now Cooper's could be one of those guys, but even him, to me, I'm still waiting to see it.
With that being said, I do have a take as it relates to Cooper Flag, and it's related to somebody who's playing in the NBA Finals. When we come back from break, I'll break down that, and then we'll break down the NBA Finals. Welcome back. This is Inside the Green Room with Danny Green. I'm Harrison Sanford. Thank you guys for tuning in as we continue to cover the NBA Finals. And before we get into our Game 3 predictions and evaluating how the series has gone out so far, as I was watching Game 3, Danny, or Game 4 predictions, as I was watching Game 3, Danny, and Chet Holmgren had that explosive first quarter, I said to myself, what is all this Cooper Flag hype about? he's not going to be better than Chet Holmgren. Like, I don't see a world where he could be better than Chet Holmgren. Skills, now granted, maybe the college game has curtailed Cooper Flagg showing all of his skill set, and this happens for a lot of college players because this is how college basketball is kind of structured. But I'm watching Chet Holmgren, and I'm saying to myself, Cooper Flagg is going to be lucky if he surpasses Chet Holmgren just because of what Chet Holmgren could do out there on the floor. But yet, Chet Holmgren got half of the hype that Cooper Flagg did. And I think a lot of that, frankly, is because Chet Holmgren went to Gonzaga and didn't go to Duke. What if Chet Holmgren played at Duke? I think we would have been giving him the same amount of hype that we would have been giving Cooper Flagg. I see Cooper Flagg and I say to myself, yes, he looks like he has all of he looks like a 5-tool basketball player. Somebody who does a lot of things, but doesn't have anything that makes him potentially
great.
I mean, some of these people talking like Cooper Flagg, like he's a surefire Hall of Famer. I'm like, just for being a good basketball player? Like,
he's good at a lot of things, but I don't see great at anything.
I don't see greatness.
I don't. I think he's just and I'm with you, but Chet Holmgren to me is a bad comparison or analogy, and I wouldn't say a lower expectation. Chet to me, I thought he had a great start, but to me, he hasn't grown as much as I thought he would. And maybe because it's for me to compare him to Wemby, because that was the same draft class, right?
Yeah.
And they were going back and forth for rookie of the year, and Wemby has taken leaps, and he's not say overachieved, but he's done more than what people expected this early. Like, he's just become really great and could be defensive player of the year and can score the ball. He's done a multitude of things, and he's great at a lot of things.
Wemby's an alien. He's
an alien, right? He's not something we've seen before. So to compare him to that, it's kind of unfair. But Chet, to me, obviously he has some injuries. He hasn't shown a bunch to me. Like, his shot is okay. He is a good big. He's 7'4". And maybe because I'm a little biased, I've seen him play in the summertime where he tries to do a little too much. But he hasn't been able to put it on a deck. Like, he can put it on a deck, but it's not like that yet. Like, nothing stands out. That's great. And I think a lot of his baskets, a lot of his play is a direct correlation to how well OKC plays. He's not a guy that's just going to go out there and get his own. And he tried it, and he had a bad second half. It didn't look good. He's got to be set up to get or put in position to get his buckets. Okay. Like, they have to drive, kick, swing. They have to lob. They have to put him in the right position. Yes. Now, can he grow into being more? Of course, because he has the tools to do so. I don't know how much he'll grow in that situation. Will he become a Dirk? People are looking at him, he could be like KD. No, it's not happening. I don't see it. It's not impossible, but he'd have to really dig into his bag and work on a summer night and night, like every day, all day, to try to get that handle. His movements aren't the same as KD's, but he's a good player. But Cooper, to me, I think is higher IQ, plays the right way, more of a polished guy in that sense. And yes, he doesn't do anything great, but, and like I said, I think he could become a pretty good guard. And I think most of the stuff he's got off in college is because he's just bigger than everybody and more he's a little more athletic. He's a little more athletic and he's taller. I think he'll look a lot different in the NBA. He won't look as tall because everybody's bigger, everybody's athletic. So yes, he'll be a decently athletic kid, but to me, he's not the kid from Chicago who looks like he has a lot of potential, a lot of tools. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but you know the white kid I'm talking about from Chicago.
Matas Buzelis?
Buzelis.
Buzelis looked like he could be somebody, bro.
Yeah, listen. So those tools are a different type of tools. So I think like Cooper is like a little smaller version, like let's say watered down version, but like a version of him, just not at that full cap. So he has some of those tools. He has some of that athleticism, but you don't have that full athleticism. You don't have that tools yet. So so that's why when I said like Gordon Hayward, maybe, you know what I'm saying? If he develops handle or a shot like that, or if he's just to me, I always saw him in high school as a defensive player, like a Karolinko. He could block shots. He could lead the league and do little things, but he could make passes. He could make that's why I think it's a great situation for him to be in Dallas. Because to me, even though they look at him as a franchise player, he plays like a role player. And I think that was the biggest knock on him. And like Bronny, when people watch Bronny play as a high schooler in college, they're like, why don't he shoot? He plays point guard. He plays like his dad, but doesn't score as much, but he plays the right way. And I think that's what Cooper Flag had such a great team. He didn't have to do all the scoring and show his bag. He just block shots, rebound, run the floor, get dunks, do the little things. And I think he's an adaptable and adjustable player. But like you said, I don't see greatness yet from any category, but also I don't see Chet Holmgren. I see him being better than Chet because I think he just has a higher IQ and he has more to his game in terms of like he can find himself his own shot a little easier than Chet can.
Okay. I guess we'll see how it plays out.
Only time will tell.
I'm tantalized by what Chet can do from rim protection, from shooting threes at his size. Boom, boom, boom. There's a potential for something great. I feel like there's a potential for something greater out of Chet Holmgren than there is a potential for something greater out of Cooper Flag because because Chet has those extremes, those
you can't teach.
The ability to shoot the three, the ability
7'3", 7'4". He's also 7'3", 7'4".
Yeah. Now, will it be harder for Chet to get to his max? Maybe, but his max, in my opinion, Chet Holmgren's max is higher than Cooper Flag's, but the floor is probably higher for Cooper Flag than it is for Chet Holmgren. If that makes any sense.
Fair assessment. So only time will tell, but I think it's not a bad comparison. It's not a bad correlation or analogy for people. Because expectations are through the roof. There's a lot of expectations for the kid. I think it's way too high putting that pressure on him, and I think it's great that he's going into a situation where he doesn't have to be the guy right away, and he'll grow and learn. Just like I said, I would love that for Dylan Harper to be in San Antonio. These are good spots for these young kids to actually learn and grow at their own pace.
I'm going to be very curious to see what the Dallas Mavericks do and what Nico Harrison decides to do with that roster. When you have Lively, Gafford, PJ Washington, Anthony Davis, and Cooper Flag, that's a lot of players in that front court, and I can't think of, and even Najee Marshall too. In your backcourt, you have Clay.
I love it, bro. I love it. I'm keeping them all. I'm playing PJ and Najee at the three. Those guys at the three. Yes, you need a point guard, but you sign Tyus Jones in free agency. You get them at the minimum. You'd be all right. You obviously want Kai to come back. You probably need 2 point guards. You Monte Morris. Take all up Phoenix's point guards, or you need somebody to set the table and have Clay, AD, and they just work with the paint, man. Going back to the traditional big lineups and have a big 3 man with PJ Washington and Najee Marshall. I don't even consider those guys. PJ's more of a 4, but Najee's a 3 to me. And I said I would put PJ at the 3 a lot too. They can shoot it.
They would be imposing in that way. That is for sure. They would definitely be yinging while the rest of the league is yanging. All right, let's talk about the NBA Finals. I am one of those people that had OKC in 5. Let's burn up those tickets because that did not happen. The Indiana Pacers are leading the series 2-1, and we can go back to game number 1. Indiana Pacers make a spectacular comeback at the end of the game, and this is after having 20 turnovers in the first half. Somehow, some way, as the Indiana Pacers do, they go out and win the game to the point where Tyrese Halliburton has now earned a nickname. His nickname, The Moment. Game number 2, OKC does what OKC does. They go ahead and have a blowout win. In game number 2, a bunch of turnovers. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 35+. You get a standout game from Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren has a better performance than he did in game number 1. Kind of expected after you have a team that's so young. Kind of have a little fright night performance or at certain points, and they play a lot better in game 2. And I think game 3 was the one, Danny, where everybody said, hold on, we got a series. Yeah, I think maybe a lot of people thought, okay, game number 1, it's not necessarily a fluke because the Pacers have done it before, but you say OKC should have won that game. They fumbled it. They smoked the layup at the end of the game, and they lose game 1. Game 2, again, as I said, OKC smacks them around. But game 3 was like, hold on, this is a tight game from end to end. Hold on, wait a second. Tyrese Halliburton is finally getting in his bag a little bit. Hold on, wait a second. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is having trouble scoring? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Wait a second, what? Like you start to think, wait, hold on. The Pacers look like the deeper team How? When did that happen? A lot of our perceptions of what this series would be, I still feel like we were all confident in it after game one, regardless of the result. Game three, I think for most
changed changed a lot of people's minds.
Everybody's like, hold the phone. This is not what I thought it was. How do you feel about this series now?
Yes, it's before it was very lopsided. Like, okay, and this to me shows OKC's lack of experience and lack of maturity because they are the better team. I mean, maybe I'm biased, or maybe I'm not. It might be I don't think I'm the only person that sees this, but we see them as the deeper team, the better team. They're just not playing like it. You know, Shea, even though he had 24 points, wasn't playing like Shea. J-Dub played well, but they didn't play OKC basketball. And Dagnar, the lineups, I don't know why he won't play the big at all. But I still think OKC could and should win this series. It just will take longer. And that's why I picked them in 6. I respect Indiana, and I knew the immaturity of them. Indiana will get at least 2 wins. I didn't think it would be this early in the series. So it might go 7 now. But, you know, it takes OKC a loss to win. I think it's going to go back and forth, and the team that actually wins back-to-back games is going to be the team to win the series. So if Indiana wins 2 right now, they win the series. If OKC wins the next 2, I feel like they win the series. So it's going to be that type of series, but I think it's going to go 7. But, yeah, I think it's all due to youth. Some guys not showing up for certain games, them dropping the ball. And you know, taking learning pains and learning mistakes. You don't have the luxury to drop these type of games instead of, and also coaching lineup changes and coaching. And Rick Carlisle just making the proper adjustments. We need to see some adjustments from OKC now. We're going to see what they're going to do tonight, and it's going to very much dictate or tell you how the series is going to go and if OKC is ready. Right now, they're showing they're ready to win a chip, but they're not really ready. Like, you know, they're not one of those teams that's like, veteran, mature, we're going to do what we're supposed to do, because to me, I just think they're the better team and they're just not showing it consistently.
So here's where I'm a little confused, because you say OKC's the better team. And on the paper, on paper, because they're deep and also because they have 3, well, definitely 2 all-NBA caliber players, if not 3, if you add Chet Holmgren.
And they were 20 games ahead of Indiana in the standings.
68-win team, but to be noted, the Pacers have had the second best record in the NBA since January 1st, behind OKC. It's not like. Here's what I would say. I think a lot, like you just said, OKC is not playing up to their potential. They're showing immaturity. Danny, what if it's just the Pacers are just better than them because they just execute better? Like,
that's a maturity.
You can have a team that's better on paper, but what if it's not maturity? What if it's just we can do things to make you not perform as well? And Tim Legler pointed this out. Andrew Nembhard, towards the end, throughout the entirety of the game, but it was really, you know, elevated towards the end of the game. He kept on top locking Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to the point where he couldn't get the ball in the spots where he's used to. And then when he finally got the ball and he would go to the spots where he thinks people wouldn't double team him, like when that little, you know, left hand dribble to the baseline, he usually just gets double teamed there because why you already had the baseline double team, and why send another man? They're sending double teams there now. Therefore, just like what happened to Anthony Edwards, just like what happened to many OKC, just like what happens to many Pacers opponents, eventually, like, they found a way to like curtail the effectiveness of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to a point where he had to give up the ball. We saw Jalen Williams have to be more aggressive. I just think we could say OKC's young, they could say they're immature, or we could say the Pacers might actually be better than them because they can execute game plans that make OKC go to a curveball that they don't have, or they have to go to a changeup that they don't have. Like, yes, OKC might be great at doing what they do, causing turnovers, transition points, and in the half court, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to give you this work. What if Rick Carlisle and his Indiana Pacers have devised a system where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can't give you that work like he usually does?
We'll find out tonight.
What if Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers are so good, at taking care of the ball typically, that they're just not going to allow you to score points off turnovers?
Maybe so.
What if what OKC does is not enough, even though they're the better team? Maybe they just don't have another version of themselves that they need to tap into in order to beat the Pacers.
Two things can be true. And a lot of those things sound to me like coaching. Somebody's being out-coached, what it sounds like to me. Because to me, I think you have the better defensive players. You have multiple guys on that team that could be all defensive team. I don't see that on the Indiana Pacers. I think you have some better offensive players. Well, fair, it could be matched up down the line where some guys are similar, but you have an MVP player. You have 2 All-Stars. Indiana has 2 All-Stars, but to me, I think you have a superstar. I don't see a superstar in Indiana. Can you find ways to get SGA where they did with Tyrese Halliburton, more open looks and not in places where he needs double team? I think Minnesota could have did better for Anthony Edwards. I think Indiana did a great job of making that adjustment of keeping him in the middle of the floor so we can't get trapped. Shai needs to find ways to be in the middle of the floor or places where they can't trap him as much and be effective. And also, he just looked fatigued. He didn't look like himself. He was very letting the game come to him, being passive. We were still waiting for Shai to arrive. The first quarter was mostly Chet and was it Lou Dort?
And the second quarter was Jalen.
Yeah, so there was not a quarter. And that's rare for them. That's rare. But it's hard to see until they do it. It's hard for me to say a team like Indiana is better than that team and yes, game 3, there was some lead changes. When OKC's won almost every damn quarter or has been leading the game. Game 1, you're up the whole 3.5 quarters. You up, obviously game 2, you blew them out. So all 4 quarters. So 7 out of the 8 quarters in 2 games, you've been beating the hell out of this team. You just didn't lock in for 48 minutes and you're executing the 4. Game 3, you're up 5 going into the 4th quarter. You just didn't execute. It's a 48-minute game. So executing and being mentally, have the mental stamina to stay locked in is obviously a player thing, but also the adjustment. It sounds like a coaching thing. So until Indiana does beat them, I just can't say that they're the better team because you got a 1 seed versus a 4 seed. It's just showing me that the teams mathematically and even on paper, it looks like OKC to me is the better team. And I think most people, that's why they picked OKC because they look like and they have been the better team all season long. But sometimes the better team doesn't win. Sometimes it's a matchup problem. But I just won't say that until I see Indiana do it and OKC fails. But even if Indiana does it, I'm going to say OKC, they dropped it. They smoked it because you lost game 1 and you have 19 turnovers in game 3, which you still could have won that game and you missed 4 free throws down the stretch. Like this little things, 6 turnovers throwing the ball directly to the other team. You don't see TJ McConnell there. He's got 5 steals, 3 backcourt.
That was nuts.
Y'all had so many pick 6s. What are we talking? Like these are mistakes you don't see a mature team make. You know what I'm saying? Like or a team that's been there. If they had been there before, if they had the experience, you take care of the ball. Like half of those turnovers very much controlled. Like they threw away pick 6s. Tyrese Halliburton get a dunk. TJ McConnell and giving them offense rebounds. If you're going to give – and they actually out-rebounded Indiana the last 2 games besides game 1. But to me, you can make some adjustments to make these things and also just take care of the ball. You take care of the ball, it's a totally different game. And then Shai only got to the free throw line 6 times. That's – even though it's more than above average for most people for Shai, we know that's below average. He's going to get there at least 10 to 12 times. You know what I'm saying? He averages about 8 or 9. But in a game like this in the finals, he's got to put more pressure on the defense. He just looked fatigued. But I said until Indiana does it, there's no way I look at them and say, oh, that's the better team. I just don't see it right now.
So, yes, I want to give credit, give notice to what you're saying. Yes, OKC could have just not done stupid things. Like throw the ball to TJ McConnell.
Hey, TJ.
But yeah. That was bugged out. But with that being said, though, Danny, I just don't. As I watch more and more of the series, and maybe this is game 3 have a heavy influence on me. Maybe, just maybe, because the Pacers are good enough to make the Thunder play a different brand of basketball. What they can rely on, they can't exploit it like they used to. Like against most teams, when the Thunder when they force 20 turnovers, they're scoring 35 plus points. But because the Pacers are just better in transition defense, instead of scoring 35, now you're only scoring 25 points off.
Maybe so. They also didn't turn the ball over much in game 3. And I think the games you're talking about, a lot of those turnovers were dead ball turnovers.
For sure. But even still, the Pacers have played some very good transition defense.
And they play better offense but OKC to me said the fatigue and they haven't shown the activity defensively. And they started Case and Wallace to show the activity, and I just haven't seen it yet. So it's like, if you're not going to get that same activity, why not play the big? To where at least you can out-rebound them. You can open the floor more for Chet. You can get more screens for SGA, and you have a big that has to guard Chet that can put in pick and rolls for SGA to where they can't switch out or trap as much. That's not as mobile to get them and make them adjust to you. So, yes, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
But OKC just doesn't, their identity, they don't look the same team. And if they were showing, listen, if they lost and they played like what I seen, scrambling active, I didn't see that game 3. They weren't getting deflections, and they still could have won the game. It's playing as bad as they did defensively. They still could have won the game.
But my thing is, Danny, maybe they can't do that in this series. Maybe they can't exploit points off turnovers. Maybe because of how succinct or how connected the Pacers defense is with Nembhard and Nesmith and Ben Shepherd, and the ability of a guy like Miles Turner or Pascal Siakam to switch out or to hedge. Maybe Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can't be a 35 plus point guy you can rely on. And but I'm about to I'll let you have it in 1 second. And I'm thinking back to your 2013-14, your Spurs era. I think what led you guys to greatness is because, yes, you guys were known for pace and space, ball movement, swing, three, right? That was your bread and butter. However, if some team was able to stop that, if they were, you had, okay, here go Timmy, go to work, Timmy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tony, do your thing. Like, you had curveballs, you had your motion offense, but you still had, okay, yo, they're curtailing. I remember, I think it's called the zipper play, and you would bring up the ball, you'd give it up, and then eventually you'd run around to the other side, something like that, right? And then I think the Heat kind of solved that. They tried to force the ball out of your hand, and so you had to have curveballs, you had to have other things you can go to, and because OKC was so great at what they've done all year long, I think this is the first series where it's like, but what if you can't do that as great as you used to? I think that's what I truly believe. That's after I watched Game 3, I was like, oh shit, they can't rely on the reliables anymore.
Maybe not, but to me, they showed me enough in the first 2 games that said you can do that. But in Game 3, historically,
changes. Game
for sure,
matchups change, game plans change, and it takes you out of it takes you out of your shit.
One game to me does not dictate. It could dictate a series, so we'll see tonight. But Game 1, they turned Indiana over. Game 2, they turned it, and I don't know what the points were off turnovers. They were more than Game 1, or they were better. That's why they won by double digits. So you're able to turn them over. Game 3, you just had the turnovers. A lot of them were silly mistakes. We'll see tonight, Game 4, how well they defend, how much they turn them over, and if they can make adjustments offensively, make things get more open. But it's hard for me to say they can't do it when they've shown it in 2 games out of the 3 games that they can turn them over and take care of the ball, and actually should have won Game 1 and they could even play in it. And they just have a history of playing bad Game 3s. And actually, that Game 3 of the night was one of their better Game 3s in the whole playoffs. Because they played terrible in Game 3s. And that was even against Memphis. You can even go back to Memphis where they were getting blown out. So I'm not dictating a series off of 1 game or a Game 3. Now, if Indiana does this for 2 games or 3 games, you know what? OKC's locked up. They just can't get out of it. They got them in a straitjacket, and they're not able to get out of their own way or do what they normally do. I just only seen it in 1 game. And honestly, the game, because Indiana's up 2-1, the other Game 1 that they won, to me, was a lot of luck. it was a lot of things bouncing their way and then just hitting shots, because you should not win a game when you turn the ball over 20. They turned the ball over like 20 times in game one. And they're up 15. They just out-rebounded them. It's all hustle. I wouldn't say luck, but basketball guys were in their favor for them to get, and it said them not making adjustments or putting a big in there to rebound, because you need to stop the possession by getting a rebound, cost them. But yeah, being down 50, you just don't see that happen. Obviously, this playoffs, you see it more, but you don't see that happen where you're losing in every category, losing the whole game, and you come down and win by a game winner, because everything went right your way toward that, especially against a team like OKC. So we'll see tonight if they can execute that again. If they can duplicate it, then I'll say, you know what, H, you're right. This might be the better team. But I'm willing to bet a lot of money that SGA is going to come out with a different type of attitude, different type of approach, and OKC all around is going to be a different type of defensive team. And it's going to look different after game 3. And it might be going back to OKC 2-2. And it still might go 7, and they still might lose. But I'm still going to say that they're the better team until I see Indiana do it multiple games where they can lock them up and make them where it doesn't look like OKC lost the game, and it's more so Indiana won the game.
I think it's pretty clear. Outside of Pascal Siakam, this is the biggest game for everybody on that court tonight.
Especially Tyrese Haliburton.
Biggest game for Tyrese Haliburton. Biggest game for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Biggest game for Miles Turner. Biggest game
J-Dub, Chet.
This is going to be fun.
This is a defining moment. Game 3 is the pivotal moment. This is going to be a defining moment. Games 3 and 4 are very defining moments for the series.
All right. We got to get out of here. We're kind of late. All right. Real quick. How does this series end? We'll be back. We'll be back on Tuesday. So that'll be after game 5. What is the headline Tuesday afternoon when we record the pod? Give me the headline.
OKC is going to be up 3-2. And we're going to be looking like, I think it's going to go 7. I think it's going to go 7 games. I said OKC in 6, but I think it's going to go 7. Just because I don't see OKC winning 3 in a row. I said the first team to win 2 in a row, which I think will still be OKC, because I think they win tonight and they win game 5. So I think it'll be up 3-2 going back to Indiana for OKC.
I'm gonna play I'll play the headline game. I agree with your prediction. What the helly? Where is Hallie? That's the headline.
Yeah.
I think he will disappear, whether it be in game 4 or game 5, if not both.
Might be both.
And it's not like he's not a bad player, but I think we've all learned now that he's the engine that makes the pace. And
they're gonna try to cut that water off. He moves in waves, and they're gonna try to cut that engine off. And his best bet is to be at home to be comfortable, because when he's on that road in OKC, that's a tough place to play in. And I know that it's hard for anybody to show up. And we see in his last game there, or even his first 2 games, he hit the clutch moment, but the games were not above his normal games.
Yeah,
overall,
that is for sure. All right, guys, enjoy NBA Finals game number 4 going down on Friday evening. We'll be back on Tuesday after game number 5. Should be a good one. Enjoy and see you next time.
Read, rate, subscribe, review. Peace.